On November 16th, in the town of Krasnohorivka in the Donetsk region, Russian forces opened fire, killing a 32-year-old man in a vehicle. This information was provided by Southwestern Donbass, citing the words of the representative of the regional prosecutor's office, Anastasia Medvedeva. The attack was carried out with artillery around 5 p.m., but no more specific information was provided. Before the conflict began, Krasnohorivka had almost 15,000 inhabitants. This city, located a few kilometers west of occupied Donetsk, is often the target of attacks by Russian forces, according to information from the regional military administration given early on November 16th. On November 5th, the head of the Ukrainian president's office, Andriy Yermak, was critical of partners who complained of a feeling of conflict fatigue. He emphasized that even people who feel tired certainly do not want to live in a world with limited freedom and security, and the effects of such a state of affairs will have long-lasting consequences. His comments refer to a recent incident with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who mistakenly believed she was talking to the leader of the African Union and confessed to Russian pranksters her feelings of conflict, weariness. Yermak's boss also expressed his dissatisfaction. President Zelensky responded to suggestions for negotiations with Russia, saying that Ukraine does not intend to sacrifice its freedom for Vladimir Putin, whom he described as a terrorist. In the conversation, Yermak emphasized that Iran, by supporting Hamas and supplying weapons to Moscow, proves the existence of an axis of evil, with Russia as the main aggressor and Iran in second place, both countries having an influence on the situation in the Middle East. After the tragic events in Hamas, Zelensky proposed a solidarity visit to Israel, but the proposal was rejected. Yermak pointed to the shared tragedies of both nations. Even though since the Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Israeli leaders have not shown solidarity with Kiev. U.S. President Biden tried to propose aid to Ukraine and Israel in one package, but was met with resistance from House Speaker Mike Johnson, who was skeptical about this solution. Although Israel declares support for Ukraine, it does not offer military assistance. Israel avoids conflicts with Russia, which has had a military presence in Syria since 2005, and allows Israel to launch attacks in Syria against Iran's interests. Nevertheless, Zelensky was planning a visit to Israel, but it is now uncertain due to a recent information leak. Yermak emphasized that Ukraine is focusing on cooperation with allies to develop its own defense industry. European Union countries will take into account the Commission's recommendations regarding the start of accession talks with Ukraine in December. In the context of corruption, Yermak defended Ukraine's actions against this scourge, refuting accusations of widespread corruption in the country and highlighting the unique reforms Ukraine was implementing despite wartime difficulties. Major Hennady Chastyakov, who was Deputy Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, lost his life in an explosive device explosion at his residence, which was announced by Zaluzhny on November 6th. Ukraine's highest-ranking general announced on his Telegram channel that an officer was killed on the day of his birth by explosives placed in one of his birthday gifts. Authorities are expected to conduct an investigation to determine the exact causes and circumstances of this tragic death. Earlier media reports said that the assistant of 39-year-old Zaluzhny died as a result of a detonation in his apartment in Kherson, Kiev Oblast. This information additionally states that the major's 13-year-old son suffered serious injuries as a result of the explosion and is currently under medical care. Ukrainska Pravda, citing sources in the investigative authorities, reported that Chastyakov's wife allegedly revealed that her husband lost his life because of a grenade placed in a gift bag that also contained alcohol. Valery Zaluzhny expressed his deep sympathy, emphasizing that from the moment the invasion began, Hennady was an irreplaceable support, devoting his entire life to the Ukrainian armed forces and the fight against Russian aggression. Chastyakov left behind his wife and 4 children. On November 5th, Ukrainian military units continued operations along the eastern bank of the Kherson Oblast, achieving some successes. Analyses based on geolocation data from November 4th suggest that Ukrainian troops approached the southwestern sector of the solar panel farm, which is located near the town of Podstepne, 12 kilometers east of Kherson and 3 kilometers from the Dnieper River. Other footage from the same day indicates the presence of Ukrainian forces in the town of Krynki, 30 kilometers east of Kherson and just 2 kilometers from the Dnieper. A military blogger from Russia reported on ongoing positional fighting in the Krynki area and along the Pishchanivka-Poyma axis, 10 kilometers east of Kherson and 4 kilometers from the Dnieper River. On the same day, Russian forces carried out glide bomb attacks on the western shore of the Kherson Oblast. Ukraine's Southern Operational Command reported that over the past 24 hours, the Russians carried out 9 attacks using 50 glide bombs aimed at populated areas on the western shore of the region. A military blogger from Russia published footage showing the moment a Russian glide bomb hit the town of Odra-do-Kamyanka, 50 kilometers east of Kherson. Another Russian military blogger reported that over the last day, Russian forces fired over 40 FAB-500 glide bombs at Ukrainian targets in the Kherson Oblast. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced the successful test of a ballistic missile launched from a Bory A-class submarine named Emperor Alexander III, which took place on November 5th in the White Sea near the Kamchatka Peninsula. The ministry emphasized that this test was intended to be the final stage before the missile was officially included in the arsenal of the Russian Navy. There are currently 3 ships of this class in service, 1 is undergoing tests, and another 3 are in the construction phase. However, on November 4th, the Ukrainian Intelligence Service, GUR, claimed that on October 25th, the Russians had conducted a failed test of the same missile. According to them, Russia is taking steps to strengthen its nuclear potential. The Institute for War Studies, ISW, regularly notes that Russia often emphasizes its nuclear capabilities to discourage the West from providing support to Ukraine. In other news, Russian military equipment manufacturer Kalashnikov Concern is working on modernizing the Kub drone. This step results from the experience gained by Russian forces during the conflict in Ukraine. The company's president, Alan Lusnikow, announced that the updated drone has been successfully tested and will be characterized by greater power and a more advanced warhead. Additionally, Kalashnikov is working on increasing the range and improving the navigation systems of this drone. On November 6th, the Kherson District Prosecutor's Office reported suspicions against a colonel of the Russian Federal Security Service, FSB, regarding the use of torture against Ukrainian civilians. Investigations conducted by the Security Service of Ukraine, OSBU, indicate that the 42-year-old officer was responsible for torturing citizens in the Kharkov region starting in the spring of 2022, when the Russians occupied the city of Novaya Kakhovka. Collected information suggests that Ukrainian residents were imprisoned by Russian occupation forces in a local commissariat where they were beaten and intimidated with death threats. These people were held in terrible conditions, without access to adequate health care, food, or water. Although the identity of this colonel was not disclosed by the prosecutor's office, he was informed in absentia of the charges against him. Additionally, the United Nations Human Rights Report, published on October 20th, indicates that the Russian occupation authorities in Ukraine systematically use torture. The documents of this international organization also include evidence that Russia has committed war crimes in Ukraine, such as murders, torture, rapes, and deportations of children to Russia. On November 6th, the judicial authorities announced the death of Lydia Kwiatkowska, a judge with 30 years of experience in the Ukrainian judicial service. Lydia, who adjudicated at the Short Kyiv District Court, suffered serious injuries as a result of a tragic road accident that took place on October 29th in the Ternopil region. According to the source, Ukrainska Pravda, the judge was traveling by car with her son, lawyer Dmytro Kwiatkowski. Unfortunately, their vehicle collided with an oncoming car after Dmytro drove into the opposite lane. As a result of this accident, the driver of the second car died on the spot. 5 other people, including the judge's son and a little 4-year-old girl, were taken to hospital with various injuries, including fractures. Despite this, Their lives are not currently in danger, according to Serhiy Kretsa, spokesman for the Ternopil Oblast police. Anger and shock are growing in Ukraine's western Transcarpathia region following a deadly missile attack by Russia. Many soldiers of the local unit were injured as a result of this attack over the weekend. The city of Uzhhorod, the multinational administrative center of the region, announced 3 days of mourning, during which flags were lowered to half-mast. It was a reaction to the tragedy that befell soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces from the Mountain Assault Brigade. Officials and families of soldiers began preparing for funerals. During Sunday Mass at the Holy Trinity Church in Uzhhorod, Bishop Varsonofy called on all the faithful of the region to pray for the fallen soldiers. It is known that memorial services were also held in other places of worship in the region, both in Protestant and Greek Orthodox churches. Viktor Mikita, Starosta of Transcarpathia, announced that there will be a minute of silence every day at 9 in the morning in tribute to the fallen, and various churches will continue memorial services. The first official statement regarding the November 3rd attack by the brigade command revealed that 19 soldiers and officers died as a result of the attack. The surviving soldiers declared their desire to take revenge on the Russian forces. The city of Mukachevo, where the brigade headquarters is located, announced that $8,321 from the local budget will be allocated to each of the 3 families who lost a loved one as a result of the attack. Additional funds will be allocated to support the family and help the injured. Local media reported that in 26 towns in the Transcarpathia region, at least 1 resident was injured or killed as a result of the impact of the Russian Iskander ballistic missile. A unit that was preparing for the award ceremony was attacked. Recorded video materials show Ukrainian troops and vehicles gathered in the town of Krynki. The explosion caused massive destruction, covering an area of ground ranging from 100 to 150 meters wide.